Hey beer geeks, and welcome to a video that I've wanted to make for a really long time. This is the Craft Beer Channel crash course in the wonderful world of hops. It's going to be a whirlwind tour around the world as we explore the incredible aromas, flavours and textures that we can get from these beautiful flowers when brewers add them at the right time, the right temperatures and in the right order. This is hops.
I like to be educated, but I'm so frustrated. Hello to my loneliness. I guess that ignorance is bliss. Take me back to before I knew. Rewind, take it out of cue. Innocence can be a young man's game. Signed up for the hall of shame. I wish I knew.
If you got into beer in the last 20 years, it's pretty likely that it was hops that hooked you. They're responsible for much of the aroma in beer, not just in modern styles like the New England IPA, but in more traditional ones, from Czech lagers to British bitters. Hop plants grow in the temperate latitudes of the northern and southern hemispheres, flowering in late summer and early autumn. It's the flowers that we use in brewing, and while at harvest time we sometimes throw flowers fresh from the vine into our beer, they're usually picked, dried and even processed into pellets. The idea is to preserve and even intensify the hop's essential oils and acids, which impart aroma, flavour and bitterness into the beer. There are four main hop growing regions in the world: the Pacific Northwest of America, the UK, Central Europe and New Zealand and Southeast Australia, and each of them have their own customs, techniques, terroir and unique varieties that mean hops can go from smelling of heady spice and floral honey to overripe mango and marijuana. In last week's video we explored the so-called Old World hop growing regions of Europe. This week we're going to focus on the New World, specifically the Pacific Northwest of America and the increasingly popular New Zealand and Australian region and varieties.
So now we're going to move over to America, possibly the bit that you've all been waiting for, to talk about the hop revolution that happened hand in hand with the American craft beer revolution, but actually starts with a British style in the English IPA and of course British hops and their crossbreeding. So when you're driving down the road and you're going past a field of say wheat, you may look at it and just go, oh, there's some more wheat. But the truth is, if you did that 20 years ago, it would have been an entirely different variety of wheat that was growing in that field, even if to you it looked identical. And that's because agriculture, in particular, the varieties that farmers are growing of all kinds of different foods, is constantly changing as we look to adapt to be better at fighting diseases, to maybe get higher yields, to maybe get different flavors. And we're slowly creating, tragically, a kind of monoculture of lots and lots of different foods, but that's not actually really happening in hops. We are trying to get as many different varieties as possible, which is really joyful. So we have been crossbreeding hops for centuries to try and get better yields, better disease resistance, but not necessarily better flavour and aroma until quite recently. So let's head now to America and look at what was happening there in, say, about the 1950s. So back then, America's macro lagers were having a huge boom. In particular, the big guys, sort of the big five of, Anheuser-Busch / Budweiser, Coors, Miller, these kind of guys. And they were looking for efficiency so they could grow faster, brew quicker, beat their rivals, expand wider. And one of those efficiencies would have been using less hops. But the problem is you couldn't necessarily use less hops without potentially getting your beer infected, without removing the bitterness that people were used to. So what they were doing is they were going to the farmers and to the universities that were crossbreeding these hops and saying, what we're looking for is hops that are significantly more bitter. Because then, if they're adding more bitterness, they've got more alpha acids, which are the antiseptics, we can put fewer of them into the beer, we get less wastage, we have to buy fewer hops, and everybody except for the farmer wins, I guess. So that's what was going on, and crossbreeders at different universities up in the Pacific Northwest, where most American hops are grown, were crossbreeding to get more bitter hops. But the side effect of that, as they were crossbreeding thousands and thousands of varieties every single year, was they were also creating really big, bold aroma hops at the same time. So these ones that had big bitterness also tended to have big aromas and flavours. The first example we have of this that became a commercial hop is Cascade, and that was in mid-1950s. And I believe that Coors did a batch with Cascade because it had 8 or 9% alpha, like unheard of in the 50s. But it imparted too much flavour, that flavour that we know Cascade for, which is sort of a lovely grapefruit, green tea, pine and resin kind of character. Well, that's no good in cause. I'll tell you that for nothing. So they didn't actually end up using much of it, but enough was grown that in about 20 years' time, homebrewers in the US started to use it. So homebrewing was made legal at the end of the 60s in the US, and lots of people who have experienced continental and UK and Belgian and Scandi brewing came back and went, well, I don't want macro pilsner. You know, it might be fine, you know, on a hot day, but I want diversity. And so these homebrewers started playing around with these high aroma hops that had been rejected by the big guys, including Cascade, which led to the invention of Liberty Ale by Anchor Brewing, and of course Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, which is essentially a British IPA or maybe ESB that's been hopped heavily with Cascade. That is essentially the lineage of it recipe-wise. So when that started to happen and craft beer started to kick off, the hop breeders started to go, well, hang about, we've now got this new set of customers that want big, bold, aromatic beers and don't really mind about the bitterness. They want quite bitter beer because a lot of them are making IPAs, but they're also using very old techniques, but in different ways, such as dry hopping, which have been going on in the UK for centuries, where you don't boil those hops, you just get the flavour and the aroma out of it. So we can make big, bold, bitter hops with big, bold, beautiful aromas and not worry that we're going to overbalance the beer. So here we have Citra, which it still blows my mind. This was only invented or only released in 2009. So this absolutely beautiful hop has become almost kind of the flagship hop of the craft beer movement for lots and lots of reasons. So one of it is high alpha. This one's 12.8, which is about typical for Citra. The other reason is its beautiful aroma. Citra does vary hugely, and the flavour it can give you in beer can vary hugely, down to the quantities and the temperatures you add. Fine Ales Jarl, one of my favourite cask beers, a 3.8% all Citra beer, smells of elderflower, but obviously this beer from The Alchemist, it's a Citra Mosaic beer, does not smell of elderflower. It smells dank and weedy and of delicious mango and a kind of peachiness. So this hop, yeah, sticky and resiny, like you've literally just taken some resin off of a tree, but also a lovely grapefruit sharpness and some sort of funky, I guess, kind of pineapple with this particular variety coming through. So a really complex aroma which can present in different ways depending on how you use it, which is another reason why Citra is so popular, because it's a very malleable hop. So this hop is kind of the origin of so much of what we love in IPAs, modern American style brewing today. You know, New England IPAs, over half of them will use Citra to some degree because it's such a signature flavour, it's such an important flavour, and it's such a recognisable flavour that drinkers genuinely love. It's almost a brand name for drinkers now. If you see Citra on a label, I think people are probably much more likely to buy it. So this is the hop that launched 1,000 ships, and it's been a wild success for the HBC, the hop breeding company that released this back in 2009, and this was one of the earliest beers to use it. Now, obviously, they have continued to expand what they've been doing with these beautiful hops. So they've continued to crossbreed, continue to try and get more aromatic, more flavourful oils out of these new breeds, and to get different aromas and flavours out of it. So different essential oils that will create a different balance of aromas and flavours within the beer. And the result of that is lots of new varieties released every single year, pretty much in the hope that they make a new Citra. So one of my favourite varieties that has come out of America has been Strata. And I use this in my home brews on the channel all the time because it smells like the stickiest, ickiest weed combined with passion fruit. Oh my god. So passion fruity, that batch. Oh my god. And look at how this, compared to the original one, just crumbles in my fingers, just like that. And it smells of, yeah, passion fruit, kind of passion fruity yogurt again. You've got that kind of soft creaminess to it. Yeah, really kind of weedy and naughty and unctuous and a bit illicit as well underneath. But actually this, it's kind of a weird combination of nostalgia for my childhood eating very sweet yogurts, fruity yogurts, and a period in my life that I probably won't relive. And all of these hops are designed to try and bring more flavour, more character and more diversity to styles that a lot of people claim are the same. You know, things like New England IPA. I'll know when Citra's in there, and I'll definitely know when Strata's put in there because they jump out of the glass and smell unlike anything else. Speaking of unlike anything else, there's a new sort of movement of using Neo-Mexicanus, sort of a wild Mexican hop, and crossbreeding them with US hops, and that's resulted in things like Sabro and Talus, which have this definite kind of coconut cream, slightly soapy dill herb kind of edge to it that lots of people hate. Lots of people love. The important thing is it's adding diversity. It's another tool to brewers. So I love Sabro in very small quantities. Single hop Sabro is not for me, but I really love when I pick up a little bit of it in an IPA. So to sum up American hops, big is probably the word. It could be in any kind of direction. Really, there are American kind of lagering hops that are subtle and spicy and hedgerowy. There are big, bold, citric, juicy tropical fruit ones. There are big, bold, pine and resin and dank and sticky hops. And there are even sort of ones that look a little bit like British hops as well. So they are growing absolutely everything in a bid to offer their brewers as many tools as they possibly can. Now, in a couple of weeks, we have our annual beer festival, Love and Beer, in which we brew collaborations with breweries all over the country in a bid to try and make this really diverse and exciting list of beers for people to come and try, meet us, have great food, and also meet our sponsors, the Malt Miller, and get excited about beer ingredients and homebrew. And with all of the beers that we've done this year, New Zealand hops have been probably the biggest hit of those 10 beers that we've all put together. So it's having a real moment at the moment, New Zealand hops, and that's for a really good reason, which is they are A, incredible, and B, entirely different to anything anywhere else. So we've done a video about terroir. You can watch that. There'll be links somewhere so that you can. Because terroir is hugely important. Like I said, the varieties taken over by the Belgian immigrants to the UK were then grown and became their own thing. America has its own terroir. That Pacific Northwest is where most of them are grown, but if you see the ones that are grown in New England, there's some grown in Texas now, all over the place. They will taste very different even when it's the same variety. Cascade and Chinook are grown in the UK and taste very, very different. And speaking of which, we have here Motueka, one of my favourite hops out there, and this is actually, it used to be called SARS B. It's kind of a daughter of SARS, but it is 9.34, this particular variety in alpha, so way higher than SARS, nearly double, and has some of that kind of fleshy strawberry kind of character, but more famous for its kind of limey, lemony, pina colada-y tanginess. Yeah, and that's what I'm picking up there, as well as like almost like a cardamom kind of thing, a little bit of spice as well. It can really verge right over into almost coconut some years, because hops will vary every year, and I think the 2023 harvests that I've had so far have been pretty coconutty. But what I love in Motueka is when you get that really beautiful lime character. This one has lemon drizzle, I think is probably the best comparison I can make for this, or lemon meringue pie. Kind of sweet, but really citric as well. And this is absolutely beautiful in Pilsners. It's great as like a third hop in IPAs to add a bit of depth and citric kind of quality, really sharp citrus. But it can go in almost any pale beer, really, and it's an absolutely stunning hop that you'll hear more of on the channel. Now, talking about the sense of kind of terroir, this is Nelson Sauvin, a very famous hop for lots and lots of reasons, but mostly known for the Sauvin bit. So the idea that it's a little bit like Sauvignon grapes, which kind of have a gooseberry, limey, sharp, sour kind of character to them. Which again, this one has, as well as that kind of, slight creamy kind of thing that the Motueka had. So yeah, it's literally named in part after that variety of grape, and it's really famous for imparting that flavour in the beer. But what I describe it as in beer, particularly when it's used on the hot side or in really heavy dry hops, is green fruit pastels. That's what I get from it, that kind of tangy, chewy, sweet kind of pastely kind of flavour. And yeah, to me, that's what it smells like. Now I've mashed this up, it smells just like green fruit pastels. I don't know the American or Australian equivalents, or indeed New Zealand equivalents, but green fruit pastels all day. And this can be, again, brilliant in really pale, low ABV beers, like this one from Pressure Drop at 4.5. It's also can be good in lagers if you're really, really careful, but you have to be careful even in IPAs, because this is a big, bold hop that will dominate any other hop. And it's no kind of accident that these do work in pale beers and lagers, because these were introduced and sort of grown up from German varieties, German immigrants that came over, I think, in about the 19th century. So that's how these hops are really spreading from sort of Central Europe. So we've got one last hop to try. You'll be glad to know we've been all around the world, and we're just hopping over the pond and to Australia, particularly southern Australia and Tasmania, where you will find Galaxy hops, as well as some other varieties such as Vic Secret. Galaxy hops, another kind of Marmite hop. You can get really big, beautiful, bold, tropical character out of this hop, but also it's very high in cohumulone, has a kind of raw bitterness to it. You have to be really careful when brewing with it not to extract too much of that character or too much of the kind of earthy character that can come from it. And Galaxy has gone through bad phases where it's not really presented that tropical character. Very happy to say that the last couple of harvests have been absolutely fantastic and got me very excited about seeing Galaxy in beers. And this batch, yeah. Kind of yellow fruit pastels, lemon sherbet, tropical kind of mango-y pineapple stuff. Yeah, this is very, very good Galaxy. That almost smells like I've got a New England IPA in my hands. It is that kind of tropical, that complex. It feels like you get the esters from the yeast and the sweetness from the malt. Everything's kind of there already, which is the joy of Galaxy. Like single hop Galaxy beers can be absolutely joyous, a bit like Citra ones. You know, it has enough going on to really carry the whole of the beer. And again, you know, this one is grown in sort of the southern Australia island, and then also in Tasmania, so you can get real variety in Galaxy depending on where it's grown and obviously by whom, and of course when it's picked. To sum up Antipodean, so Australian and New Zealand hops, would to say that you often get a kind of white wine character to them. You often get a real kind of citric, lemon, lime kind of peel that might come from the heritage, the German heritage that it has. But it's quite hard to pick out from the American varieties. What it adds is depth and complexity and variety to the kind of beers and the kind of flavours that American hops are adding. And the reason that they become so popular is exactly that. You can use them in combination with American hops really, really well to make your beers smell and taste different and add a bit of character to them. So I hope that's been useful in giving you an idea of what to expect when you see certain names, whether it's, you know, America or British grown, or whether it's Strata or Mandarin and Bavaria, what to expect from your beers when you're tasting them and you know the hop varieties. What I would absolutely say is that please don't dismiss beers because you don't necessarily like that particular hop. They can all present so differently, whether it's down to when they were picked, what the weather was like and where it was grown, or whether it's down to how the brewer used it. Was it hot side, cold side, big dry hops, what the style is as well. You know, you might not like Sabro in a New England IPA, but you might absolutely love it in a porter. If I could get you to take one thing from this video, it would be that no hop region, and indeed no hop, is better than another. We should enjoy them all, we should revel in them all, and we should recognise that they all have different uses. Yes, Golding will taste disgusting in a New England IPA, but I can assure you that Strata would be terrible in a bitter. And we need to remember that they all have their specific uses and are beautiful for that and have been bred and grown and used for that in some cases for centuries. So not better, just different, which I think is a wonderful message for the world in 2024. So that was the Craft Beer Channel crash course into hops and a whirlwind tour around the world. If you've got any questions, please do hit me up in the comments. I'd love to answer any questions you might have. And also please do check out all the other videos that I referenced throughout this, because there's loads more information, including our feature-length documentary with Siren Craft Brew, in which we talk about the American hop revolution and the impact it had on global brewing. It's absolutely fascinating, one of the best things we've ever done. So do check out that and like and subscribe.
I miss not knowing that we're all screwed when we play our roles and ignore the problems. I wish I knew